Rabbi, you had to turn the computer
Shalom.
on.
Shalom, everyone. Today is January the 10th, 2022. We are studying together Parasha Beshalah. This is an amazing Parsha. I would say that this is really one of the most important Parshas. Of course, they all are. This is the Parsha that is also known as this. The Shabbat is known as Shabbat Shirah because we have the Song of the Sea in this Parsha, so also known as the Song. Uh,
I
Song
hear
of the
you.
Sea, and also known as the Song of Miriam, by the way, in scholarship circles now. And it probably one of the oldest texts. If you are taking score of how texts are old, some that if we use the idea that the Torah itself is a composite of many, many different texts, that's a subject for obviously another kind of class. I want to take a look today uh, at at I guess I want to call it like a frame by frame analysis of the moments just before the splitting of the sea. We've read them many, many times. Um, in fact, if you go to last year's class, which is on our YouTube channel, you'll see. I think it was a pretty good class on the whole idea of how to understand chasing Pharaoh was chasing the Israelites, or if the Israelites were trapped, and what was the purpose of the chase? Was it to bring them back, or was the purpose to kill them? And I think it raised a lot of questions. Similarly, you know how it is in these classes. It's not you're not going to be surprised to hear this, that every single verse raises questions. Every single passage raises, hours and hours of possibility in terms of discussion, philosophical discussion, interpretive discussion, and that's the joy of this. And of course, the reason that we are all here is because we all sense that this is part of our lives in some way, and that we are deriving, I think, a good set of, at least at the very least, a good discussion, and also a good set of questions that takes us into the week, and is already from Monday enables us to anticipate the reading for Shabbat. So our text is the standing at the sea. It's Exodus 14. Verses 9 to 31. I'm going to read it in English. I've been doing this method over the last several weeks, which is giving you the text in English, kind of like preparing you, and then going in depth in Hebrew with interspersed translations and commentary. So with no further ado, we're going to put the text up here. And if you have a chumash beside yourself, you can go to chapter 14. This is where we are, verses 9 to 31. So now you are seeing this. Everybody give me a thumbs up if you can see the text. Yeah, got it. Okay. So this is in the middle. We've already had Pharaoh change mind, and the Egyptians gave chase to them. And all the chariot horses of Pharaoh, his horsemen, and his warriors overtook them and camped by the sea near Pi-Hachirot before Baal-Zephon. I don't need to tell you that this is complicated. As Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites caught sight of the Egyptians advancing upon them. So you get the picture. It's like, oh my God, they're coming after us. Greatly frightened, the Israelites cried out to the Lord. And they said to Moses, "Was it for want of graves in Egypt that you brought us to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, taking us out of Egypt? This is not the very thing we told you in Egypt, saying, 'Let us be, and we will serve the Egyptians, for it is better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness.' But Moses said to the people, 'Have no fear. Stand by and witness the deliverance which the Lord will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will battle for you, and you hold your peace.' Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward. And you shall lift up your rod and hold out your arm over the sea and split it, so that the Israelites may march into the sea on dry ground. And I will stiffen the hearts of the Egyptians so that they go in after them. And I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his warriors, his chariots and his horsemen. That the Egyptians know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots and his horsemen. The angel of God, who had been going ahead of the Israelite army, now moved and followed behind them. And the pillar of cloud shifted from in front of them and took up a place behind them. And it came between the army of the Egyptians and the army of Israel. Thus there was the cloud with the darkness, and it cast a spell upon the night, so that the one could not come near the other throughout the night. Then Moses held out his arm over the sea, and the Lord drove back the sea with a strong east wind all that night, and turned the sea into dry ground. The waters were split, and the Israelites went into the sea on dry ground, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. The Egyptians came in pursuit after them into the sea, all of Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen. At the morning watch, the Lord looked down upon the Egyptian army from a pillar of fire and cloud, and threw the Egyptian army into panic. He locked the wheels of their chariots so that they moved forward with difficulty. And the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the Israelites, for the Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Hold out your arm over the sea, that the waters may come back upon the Egyptians, and upon their chariots and upon their horsemen." Moses held out his arm over the sea, and at daybreak the sea returned to its normal state, and the Egyptians fled at its approach. But the Lord hurled the Egyptians into the sea. The waters turned back and covered the chariots and horsemen, Pharaoh's entire army that followed them into the sea. Not one of them remained. But the Israelites had marched through the sea on dry ground, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. Thus the Lord delivered Israel that day from the Egyptians. Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the shore of the sea. And when Israel saw the wondrous power which the Lord had wielded against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord. They had faith in the Lord and his servant Moses. Okay, I have just read you the account of the splitting of the sea. I have to tell you, even upon reading this many dozens, hundreds of times, wow, it's really complicated. It's more complicated in English. It's confusing. It's completely confusing. There are so many different kinds of elements going on here. It's no wonder, that biblical scholars who are inclined in this way see multiple threads here of a narrative, and for a different kind of class, it would be good to put up on a kind of screen, in color-coded way, the theory of how different strands of the story are coming together. But for us, the story is one story, and if the story is one story, then how it comes to be one story, while fascinating on its own, it tells a different story. But what the composite story tells us, I think, is even more fascinating. And that's I would put myself in the traditionalist camp, in the sense that as much as I enjoy the kind of forensic analysis of where, how the story holds together, what piece belongs to what strand, etc., all of that is totally fascinating. At the end of the day, you have one story, and that's the story that is received by the community, and then it is interpreted by the community as one story, and that captivates the imagination, both the spiritual and the aesthetic and the literary imagination, everything, and it teaches us something. And I believe what it teaches us is actually what is so enriching. It teaches us some truths about everything, about life in general, etc. Okay, so my point is, boy, is it complicated. What a complicated story this is. It's very, very hard to understand. But as usual, in order to understand it, we have to kind of drill down, and we're going to take it apart piece by piece. And in doing so, we're going to see, why it's such a great story, and we're going to see what kind of questions there are there. So I'm just queuing up my little text here, making sure that we are all lined up properly. Okay, and here we go. So back to this. Unless we have any comments right at the beginning. Anybody wanted to react to the first reading? All right, let's go. Here we go. All right, so we have this. Some of this I didn't translate. Some of this I'm going to translate orally. Vayirdefu Mitzrayim achareim. They're running after them. Vayasigu otam. They catch up to them. Chonim alayam. They're camped on the bank of the sea. Kol sus rechav paro. All the horses, the chariots. Parasha v'chilo. His riders, his army. Al pi achirot lifnei Baal Tzafon. So in a particular geographical area that has pi achirot on one side and Baal Tzafon. All of that is fascinating, but not part of my conversation right now. Paro hikriv, he's getting closer. They look up. And they see Egypt. They're traveling behind them. They're scared. They're terrified. And they cry out to God. So my first question is, what does this mean that they're crying to God? Right? They see this moment, and and what do they know how to do? I want to say that part of this text suffers from the fact that we have 2,000 years of Jewish piety, kind of layered up like a big sediment over this, and so the first thing that a person like me is tempted to do is think about shul, right? Think about Yom Kippur. You think, none of us do that. But it used to be that if you go to a shul where people like to scream, and they obviously still exist, so people scream in their prayer. But screaming also is a natural function of fear, right? Oh my God, what are we gonna do? Oh my God. And so you imagine that there's a kind of tumult here, and that it's not that they're davening. Okay, this is we make a big mistake in thinking that they organized a service here and they started davening. Okay, it's tumult, it's exasperation, it's and it's for all the reasons that I have here and more, which is they're afraid, they're going to die, they see the Egyptians coming, they're terrified. Many of us, most of us probably don't have the experience of being chased by enemies, and that terror, okay, the terror that is numbing to you, and what are you going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Most of us, though, we have experienced other kinds of terror, where you get, you're waiting. I mean, I mentioned this early on this year at the high holidays. Part of and we're deep in it right now, which is part of the experience of going through tests all the time is the what if, right? And the moment in between the taking of the test and the waiting for the result is I don't want to downplay this at all. It's truly a moment of terror, because it means, what are we going to do? How are we going to change my life? And I'm talking about, waiting for a diagnosis of this. It's and people, of course, have experienced even more serious tests, that may result in real threats to their mortality. So here, we do not have the cultural experience of screaming. We're not comfortable with that in our culture. But not too long ago, we were very comfortable with that. Okay. Now the kicker line. Okay, I have to say, every time I read this line, I don't know how to read it. And but before we get to that, Marlene, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
The Jews were used to crying out. Didn't it say last week that God heard the cries?
Indeed. Vaishma na'akatam. It was last week or 2 weeks ago. Vayiskor, and he remembers. So there is crying, there is moan. Na'aka is moaning. Vanitzak, it's when we read the Haggadah is based on the passage from Deuteronomy. Arami Oved Avi, my father was a wandering Aramean, however we translate that. The Egyptians enslaved us. Vanitzak, we cried. So, but again, it's, did we have a vigil? Did we, make a service? Did we just scream? Did we pound our chest? All of the above. And maybe there was just a spontaneous outburst of tza'aka, which is, whoa, yeah, that kind of thing, okay? If you saw the movie Saturday night, it was a silent movie, but you had a wonderful scene there of, Kol Nidre, and it was done so beautifully that you could almost hear the crying and there, okay? All right. Any other questions? I don't see, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
Can I?
Go ahead. Let me stop and go see you. Go ahead, Ilana.
I think it's a good sign that they are crying to God, because it shows that they trust God. They believe God now, and maybe it's a progress from before.
So that's really one of the critical issues is to what extent they do, because I'm not spoiling it here. They get to the point where when after they see the Egyptians crushed and drowned, that is when they believe in God. Vayaminu b'Adonayu Moshe avdo. That's what it says. Vayar Yisrael met al sfat Vayar Mitzrayim met al sfat hayam. They see the Egyptians, dead, and at that moment they believe. So looking at this passage, we see that part of the theme here is to what extent they believe and to what extent they don't believe. And to what extent are you taking a bunch of people who are not yet cultivated in any kind of way to interact with God? They have not had a relationship with God at all for many hundreds of years now. And now God is, showing them all sorts of plagues and promising everything. Moses promising everything, and they don't know what to do. And it's, we got to appreciate what it means to be an Israelite, having I'm committed to the interpretation that I gave over Shabbat, which is that they left Egypt on the night of the plague of the firstborn. They left with total compliance and total trust. They were told to leave. They leave. And I wrote in my little sheet, the miracle, with a bit of tongue in cheek, but also seriousness. The miracle of the Exodus was not the firstborn and all the great signs and wonders. The miracle was that they didn't complain. Right? They left without complaining, and many of us are have been in positions of leadership or stewardship of organization, and we all, I'm looking at half of you, all of you, where what does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to be a steward of an organization? It's to manage the expectations of the people and to navigate sometimes, probably more often than not, the disappointments and the complaints of people, right? I don't want to say it as a polemic. I'm saying it as a kind of reality, is that, forget, just, leading in the Jewish community, if you're a mayor, if you're, the mayor is, you're 90% of the time you're dealing with, I have a pothole on my street. Why is the light not working? Why, complaints. You're not dealing with people calling up and saying, you did a wonderful job. You're dealing with why didn't they clean my garbage this morning? Mm-hmm. And so part of what it means to steward a people is that you're managing their expectations. And so here the people are leaving. They left Egypt, and it seems like they did everything that they were told. That is quite amazing. But it doesn't take long for them to begin to complain. In fact, so it's a 3-day journey from where they were to now to the edge of the sea, and they say what they're going to say here, and it never ceases to shock me that they have this much chutzpah to say this to Moshe. Okay? Vayomru el Moshe, hamibli kvarim b'Mitzrayim lakachtanu lamut b'midbar. Was it for a lack of graves in Egypt that you took us to die in the desert? Mazot asita lanu lo tzianu b'Mitzrayim. What did you do to us, right? So you have to admire the sharpness here, the sarcastic, the caustic nature of the whole thing here, because just a second, you have to, because it's absolutely stunning. On the other hand, I want to say that there's a bit of humor here, okay? And the humor is Egypt was filled with graves, right? Egypt, the great monuments of Egyptian civilization were their graves. They were monuments to the dead, okay? And so it's saying, look, Egypt, the land full of graves, land of pyramids, the land of that, where the main culture is the book of the dead. There was plenty there. And so you had to take us out in Egypt, right? Perfect Jewish humor. But John, go ahead. John, you have and then, okay, go ahead. I'm going to close.
I was going to say it sounds very modern. It sounds like a Borscht Belt comedian. It sounds like Jackie Mason to me.
Indeed, and we could almost say that part of the tradition, I almost want to say that the ground zero of Jewish humor is that line. That is the line that is the ground zero. But that may be overstating it. It's hard not to hear the humor there, and I want to talk about that in a second. But go ahead, Susie. Go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, you've got those first two paragraphs. The first one is Vayirdafu Mitzrayim, so it's in the plural, and then the second paragraph it refers to Egypt in the singular. So it's like, and it's also Kol Sus Paro. So it's the entire army is coming out, right. And but Israel sees it as like a single unit, and it's immense. And then Vayitzaku. So they're crying out to God, but then they're as Ilana pointed out, this is showing their faith in God after all the miracles, the previous miracles and all that. But they still have anger, and they're taking that out on Moses because he's in front of.
So hold that thought. But is there another comment there? Okay, so their comment there, what Susie just said, I think is really the driving force here. A comment like that, as caustic and sarcastic, is a comment that is a relational comment, okay? When you think, and back to John's comment, which is, this is the beginning of Jewish humor, when you think of all the great, Jewish comedians, what the art of comedy is all about, it sets up a conflict, it sets up distance, and it's playing with that. The best of the best of the best comedians are taking that tension to the limit. There are so many different examples I could show, and I really could have gone down a rabbit hole with this, but I just want to show you a quick 4-minute clip of a New Yorker cartoonist. The New Yorker style cartoons, it has this particular art of balancing the sarcastic with the rude, with the playful, with the truth. Okay, so here is Bob Mankoff, who is one of the editors of the New Yorker. I think he may have retired recently. This is a little bit of his thing. You all see that? Thumbs up if you see it. Got it.
The title is from my most famous cartoon. There's a guy on the phone like this. He's looking at his appointment book, and he's saying, "No, Thursday's out. How about never? It's never good for you." It's both polite and rude at the same time.
All right, so just a second. He wrote a book. He edited New Yorker cartoons, and he took that, his favorite cartoon is Never Okay, and you get it. I mean, that's how to explain what that is? It's sarcastic, it's cutting, and there's a lot of truth to that, because that means
those types of things. That's what humor is. It's always the right amount of wrong. I've been a cartoonist at the New Yorker since 1977. I've done close to 1,000 cartoons for the magazine. My book is a memoir of my life as a cartoonist and as cartoon editor. I've thrown in a few of the people I've been married to as well, you know. No sex scenes, though. But still very interesting, very funny. This is actually it, okay? When I look at cartoons, I'm looking at them very, very fast. 500 from our regular contributors. About 500 from everybody else. So about 1,000 overall. My job is to evaluate so that you can enjoy it. A cartoon of mine that I really like is called What Lemmings Believe. What they believe is the image they're going up. They're going up. That's all of our foolish beliefs. And there's cartoons and cartoons and cartoons. There's another cartoon. Shows pigs talking to each other. And one is saying, you know, I wouldn't mind living in a fundamentalist Islamic state. The cartoons are not downward to supposed inferiors. The humor is directed back to the class of people who are reading the magazine. Big cartoons, Roz Chaff's cartoon shows a man looking at an obituary. One of the items says 2 years older than you. Other says 3 years younger than you. Another item says your age right on the dot. So that's...
Sorry, just look at that a little bit.
It's a cartoon that's funny and humorous, but also has deep meaning. You know, I was walking in the desert. Clouds parted. Finger came down full of fire, pointed at me and said, "You will be a cartoonist." No, that's not the way it happened. I didn't decide, I just became. I was a kid who drew and was funny. And my mother never got my sense of humor, but, you know, I had a complicated relationship with my mother, and conflict is also at the heart of humor. You know, happy families, no humor. Boring. Humor is for coping. It's for all the bad things in life. It's this thing that all societies, all cultures have, and we have to ask why.
Okay, that's very, very clever and very cute. And he gets it. He gets the whole thing, really encapsulates it so beautifully and so concisely. It you know, I could have shown hundreds of cartoons that make the same point, which is there's a little sarcasm, there's a little bit of pointedness, you know, there's truth, the truth. So when the people of Israel speak this way to Moses, they're actually speaking the truth, which is, what the hell did you do for us? Why did you do this? And it puts right in front a conflict and the conflict is, I mean, what makes this brilliant is that this is the conflict that is going to accompany Moses and Israel throughout the desert. We got 40 years of this coming. This is the first time they complain, and it's done with humor, and so and irony and sarcasm, all of which has to resolve itself. Okay, I'm just going to put up in my own screen here a kind of review of this. Sorry, here we go. And this is what Mankoff said. They're polite and rude at the same time. It's just the right amount of wrong. They're direct, you know, he writes the magazine for the right class of people. That is to say, you know, we are looking at this and we can see ourselves. You know, I think we all gravitated to that obituary, which is, you know, we all read obituaries and you know, we are stunned when it's like, oh boy, you know, like, you know, yesterday Bob Saget died. Bob Saget, 65 years old, you know. Oh, I don't know about that, you know. And so we're all kind of keeping a private score when we are reading these things, and that's why it's true and it's funny at the same time. And at the bottom, he said, conflict is at the heart of humor, and that's just the truth, you know. And one of the ways that you can resolve conflict is through humor. And so my the question that as I read this, I'm asking, which is, to what extent when the Bnei Israel say this, they are actually attacking, but they're also they're creating an opening for a resolution. In a way, and not to get too deep in this, but we will. I love watching Don Rickles and videos of Don Rickles, and he was the master of attacking people and insulting people, but you knew it was a game. And the question is, how do you one up on this? How do you, at what point do you do? And there are people who were able to do that, because the way to do that was to be funnier than he was, or to have a much more sharp. And he understood it, and he took it. He took it well. When people bested him in that way, you could see this on many videos. The point is that we're in a moment of tremendous tension, and the way to cut through the tension is to say the obvious, but also it invites Moses to respond. Okay, now what I find so completely perplexing is that Moses' response is in no way appropriate. Okay, I'm going to at least put that out as a proposition. We're going to go into the text and see that. Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just if we really want to be accurate, it says "Vaitz'aku el Elohim,"
right?
and then it says "Vayomru el Moshe."
Moshe, good point. Good catch.
So they were yelling at God.
God?
But they spoke. They said they spoke to Moshe.
And
So it's a different approach.
Take it out on? Who are they going to take it out on? They're going to take it out on Moses, right? Moses is right in front of them. He's going to be the lightning rod for their anger, okay? And now, back inside. Okay, so I'm going to leave the comments there. Humor is for coping. It's for all the bad things in life. What is the effect? So I want to say that humor neutralizes, equals, or creates a new power equilibrium. How do you answer that? How do you answer that? What? By being more sarcastic. What would Moses have said? What should Moses have said? So I just thought about this, use my own sense of humor. You're absolutely right. Let's go back. Besides, I forgot my staff polish. In other words, like, are you crazy? Are you nuts? Are you crazy? You think we're going to go back? How can we go back? That at least, that equalizes the tension. But Moses doesn't say that. Listen to what Moses said. They use the expression "Ma zot asita lanu," which is a tremendous indictment, and we've seen it. We see it 5 other times. I'm not going to go deeply into this, but there are 5 other instances of someone saying to someone else, "What did you do to us? What did you do to us? What did you do to us?" And here it's as if Israel turns it against Moses, indicting Moses in the way that God indicts Adam or Pharaoh, Abraham, etc. That they're saying basically to Moses, "You sinned against us by doing something outside of our interest." Okay, and then they say this, this is the thing we told you. Stop from us. Let's serve Egypt. Better for us to serve Egypt than die in the desert. This is already not humorous. This is really a sophisticated debate. Okay, I'm going to skip over this because even though this is really this is such a profound philosophical debate, I want to get to what Moses' answer is. Okay. Moses says to the people, Al tirau, hityatzvu uru et yeshuat Adonai. Stand up, do not fear, stand up and see God's salvation that he will do for you today. Asher yaseh lachem hayom, ki asher yitem et Mitzrayim hayom, lo tosifu lirotam od olam. For when you see Egypt today, you will never see them again. Adonai yilachem lachem v'atem tacharishun. God will battle for you and you will be silent. Okay? I'm looking at this and going like, wait a minute. There's something profoundly, on the one hand, you could say, okay, he's saying, Shah, don't worry, it's going to be okay, God will fight for you, okay? Right? If I were an Israelite, and I had just said, what are you doing? And someone said, Shah, still, it's going to be okay, I'd be so frustrated. I wouldn't know what to do with myself, okay? I'd be so angry. And then on top of it, he says, don't worry, be strong. and look at God's salvation, because God is going to fight for you. And I'm going to go, what? What are you talking about? They're about to kill us. Okay? I don't see God anywhere. I don't see what's going on. This is not a good thing. Go ahead, Susie.
So two things. So is that what Ilana said? It's Vayomru el Moshe. They don't. It doesn't use that verb with God because they don't have a working relationship with God.
Okay.
So that's why it doesn't say Lemor. Doesn't say Vayomru. But I think Moshe is reacting to what's going on inside with the people. You know, it's like they're crying out to God. They're now yelling at him. He understands that they're afraid. So he's acknowledging their fear, but saying, you know, like, I mean, he doesn't parse it out this way, but it's like, he doesn't say, I know that you're afraid, but he's acknowledging their fear by saying, don't be afraid.
Okay.
Maybe it would have been better to say, I know you're afraid, but God's going to take care of it.
So here's what I want to say, and for pedagogical purposes, I'm going to say, so Moses is on his own learning curve here as a leader. Don't forget, he did not parachute into the leadership of Israel after 20 years in the Congress and 20 years in the Senate. You know, he was plucked out of Midian as a shepherd, after having saved this future wife from bullies. Okay. And because he obviously had some kind of insight and some kind of heart that motivated him to protect other Israelites, and a great deal of empathy, and he was perfectly differentiated both between Egyptians and Israelites. There are a lot of things that made him a perfect candidate, but is he fully formed here at the beginning of the trajectory? Well, my answer is no. Now, it's a very audacious, arrogant, and critical thing to say, as a puny little, someone living 4,000 years later. Okay, but we're allowed. Okay, but I'm saying, we know the end of the story, and we know that he emerges as the greatest of all the leaders of all time, with many, asterisks. But is he acting as an effective leader here by saying, shush still, it's okay, believe in God, all you need to do is believe in God, which the tradition actually is all over him here. They're saying, look, why are you davening? This is not a time to daven. This is not if you picture this, in the religious imagination, then you see Moses, he's standing on the ledge, right? And what does he do as the people are screaming? He puts on this talis and tefillin, and you would look at each other and go like, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. What is he davening now? As this can't be, okay? And what is he saying to us? He's giving us a very pious message here when we need something else. Ilana, I saw your hand up. No.
I just want to say that we have to give Moses a lot of credit for, does he really mean what he's saying? That, yeah, God will help, God will do, what, does he believe in that? Or is just saying it to calm them down?
That's a very good question. Is he saying this to calm them down? Well, if he is saying this to calm them down, it's not really effective. Okay, so in order to show you what effective is, okay, the best place to look for an effective kind of speech or moment in this kind of crisis is sports. Okay, and I'm going to show you two little clips here of what coaches say before a really critical match, a game, okay? Here is one of them, and give me 3 minutes of your time for this.
I'm trying to be a spiritual guy. I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm not telling you how to believe. But every day, at some point during the day, I open up a book that I believe in, and I just pop to a page and I look through it, okay? Sometimes that page gives me great insight. I'm going to tell you what I opened up to today. First term. But you don't have to be a historian of this to know what I'm telling you, okay? The first thing I opened to is a story about David, right? David was the son of Samuel, one of the greatest kings of Israel, right? what happened with David, he had 8 brothers. Okay, when Samuel's time came to lose power, everybody was looking to his sons. He had 8. David was the least likely, but the one chosen. He was the youngest, the smallest, the weakest. He was the one selected. Now you may say, well, why am I telling you that tonight? Why do we need to hear that? Here's why. I'm telling you what. He was the least likely candidate. There are a lot of people out here tonight who think you are the least likely candidate to be successful. David was chosen because he had an intangible. His intangible was his heart. All right? Now they're bigger. They got athletes. They got guys going to Division I schools. All right? We can see that. And so can everybody else. But nobody can see the intangible with us. All right? There's a reason why I opened up to that passage. We got to make that happen tonight. Be the intangible tonight. Here we go. Lord, I'm only one. I am one.
Okay. It goes on and on and on. It becomes a bit of a caricature of that. But what's brilliant here is he's pointing to them, and he's saying, you gotta be, okay? And just for the sake of we gotta do this, I will do one more of these because how could I not? Just a second, I'm sorry. This is from the Here we go. Miracle on Ice, coaches seen USA versus Russia. I forget, 1990, Lake Placid.
Great moments are born from great opportunity. And that's what you have here tonight, boys. That's what you've earned here tonight. One game. If we played them 10 times, they might win 9. But not this game. Not tonight. Tonight, we skate with them. Tonight, we stay with them. And we shut them down because we can. Tonight, we are the greatest hockey team in the world. You were born to be hockey players. Every one of you. You were meant to be here tonight. This is your time. Their time is done. It's over. I'm sick and tired of hearing about what a great hockey team the Soviets have. Screw them. This is your time. Now go out there and take it.
Okay. Wow. So I don't think it gets better on film than that. That's the classic coach's speech, okay? And what is the classic coach's speech about? It's not God will do it for you. Not at all. It's you're going to do it. You have the capability. I believe in you. You got this. You got this in the bag. They say about them, they're the greatest. Not at all. You're the greatest. This is your time. So it's brilliant. Brilliant writing, brilliant acting in that one scene. And I want to say, okay, and I'm being very critical here for the sake of, a good creating a lot of tension with you. It's to say, so I guess if Moses was to be effective here, he would have said something similar, which is, children of Israel, those are Egyptian idolaters, they're scum of the earth, they worship idols, and they have death at the center of their life. Well, we are Israel. We may be a ragtag group of slaves, but we got this. We're going to go forward. We're going to do this, and we're going to go. We're going to get to the other side, and God will be with us. Okay? That's what I want him to say. But he doesn't say that. He says, believe. God will save you. Believe. And it's just empty. It's not empty. It's not satisfying. And I think that that's a good way, or that is a plausible way to read this text. Because what happens afterwards, or before I go back to the text, I want to see if you have a response to this. If you could challenge me on this, agree, disagree, or kind of modify this. Go ahead, Susie, and then
Yeah.
Alana.
But this isn't a hockey game.
Okay. It's life. Okay, but I don't know, I could have pulled up a battlefield scene, the D-Day speech, Eisenhower to the troops before D-Day, and it was like, we have a big thing, we are the best, we are the amazing, and God will be with us.
But they're not an army.
They're
They're runaway
for
slaves.
They're running for their lives. Okay, it's a good debate. Go ahead, Ilana.
I'm just thinking about this saying, God only helps you if you
Help yourself.
do something about it.
So there's a truth to that, which is, and the truth to that is, I'm not going to sit and wait for miracles. So my criticism here is that this moment actually reinforces an idea that you should be passive. And that is not a way to live, I'm afraid. Or that's a questionable posture with which you have in life. But as Susie, I would, concur here. Yeah, they're slaves. They don't know any better. They're not hockey. It's not, they're not trained for this. They don't know. And so they need to be protected. Yes, of course. Okay. But there's something to be said here for believe in yourself, and maybe, I would take the hit on, believing yourself is just another form of idolatry, but not, in the sense that you have to have some capabilities, you have to have some confidence in your skill, and God will be with you. All of Breshit, the book of Breshit is, I will be with you. Joseph, he's got amazing talent, but God is with him too. Bob, you have your hand up. I don't see your face, but I have a hand up, and unmute or unvideo you mute. Bob Like. I missed them there. Okay. All right. Any other reactions to this? Okay, go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm unmuting because I was trying to read something.
Okay.
I wanted to respectfully disagree.
Thank you.
And that is that I think that Moshe is not just saying believe in God, but also act per God's instructions. And it reminds me of one of my favorite Zen koans, which I'd just like to briefly read. A Zen master says to his pupils, if you say this stick is real, I will beat you. If you say this stick is not real, I will beat you. If you say nothing, I will beat you. There seems to be no way out. One pupil, however, found a solution by changing the level of communication. He walked up to the teacher, grabbed the stick, and broke it.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the messages that I've seen talked about, that some of the Jews Israelites wanted to just drown in the sea. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to fight a war. Some wanted to pray. And that was not the time for any of those things, but instead to follow God's instruction.
So I so appreciate what you've brought here, because what you've given us in a thumbnail is really, the rabbinic tradition, as you kind of condensed here, is grappling with the same question. And yes, we are coming out on two sides here. The rabbinic tradition has to grapple with the fact that they do something, they end up doing, and how did they get to it? So the rabbinic tradition fills in the blanks this way, and it creates an alternative narrative in which you have big debates breaking out among the Israelites saying, let's go and let's not go. And the rabbinic tradition will find its hook in the text for this. But I'm being hyper literal or hypercritical and trying to find evidence for that in the text itself. And I don't find that evidence. I will read it for you. Read it, in this way here. Okay. So Moses again, Alti Ra'u gives the lousiest coach's speech. Okay. I see Lila in a second will ask you. And God will fight for you. God will battle. You will be silent. Is this ineffective? So I showed you the coaches. So bottom line, believe in God. God will do for you. Coaches, believe in self. You got to do it. Okay. In what way is Moses effective? In what way is Moses ineffective? God will fight for you versus you will fight and God will be with you. How do I understand? Okay. So from this verse, which is what Moses says, God will fight for you. Let's go to the next verse. The next verse says, God says to Moses, Mati takelai, daber b'nei Yisrael v'yisau. So God says to Moses, why are you screaming to me? Tell them to go. Okay? This is a very, very puzzling statement. And of course, it puzzled our medieval commentators because they say at this point, so imagine what the text seems to imply here on this reading is they're screaming to God. They take it out on Moses. They say this sarcastic, terribly, humorous but sarcastic thing to him. There weren't enough graves in Egypt. They take it out and say, and Moses says, no, don't worry. God will take us. God will take us. And then without telling us what Moses says to God, God intervenes and says to Moses, Matitz akelai. What are you doing? Why are you screaming to me? So there is a plausible reading, which Rashi has, which is that at this particular moment when Moses said, stop, God will take care of it, Moses turns to God in prayer. And what Rashi says, quoting the tradition, is, no, it's not time to pray. Tell them to go. But I think the more careful reading is Ibn Ezra's reading, which is that he says as follows. Some say that Moses was crying out to the God. This teaches us that Moses was standing and praying. However, this is incorrect, for God had already told Moses, I will get honor upon Pharaoh. Thus Moses knew that God would destroy Pharaoh and his army and would not cry unto the Lord. On the contrary, this was told to Moses, who stood in Israel's stead. Bavur shataku b'nei Yisrael el Adonai. In other words, and I know this is complicated, but when God says matitz akelai, he's not referring to Moses, he's referring to Moses and the people. And he's referring back to the cry that you heard before, which is, you're busy crying to me. Get up and go. And this, I'm going to say, is a rebuke to Moses. This is a way of rebuking Moses and saying, Moses, now is not the time for pieties. Now is the time to tell them to go. You got to lead them into the sea. You got to tell them to go. Daber b'nei Yisrael v'yisau. And then what happens? Okay? What happens is, Vata, God says, Harem et matcha, lift up your staff, place your hand over the sea, split the sea, and the Israelites will go inside the sea on the dry land. I will strengthen the heart of Egypt. They will come in after you. I will make them stiffen, and all of the armies and their chariots and their riders, and they will finally know that I am God. And then we have this moment. It's a very perplexing moment where some kind of angel intervenes. The angel of God that is before the people goes behind the people and basically functions as a barrier between Egypt and Israel. It never tells us that Moses said to them they should go forward. It only says that Moses places his hand over the sea. So my reading of this text is as follows. What God says and Moses says There's tremendous tumult and tremendous tension here. The people are afraid. They use humor. They open themselves out for a retort. Moses is ineffective in his reply to them. And God says, stop the crying. Tell them to go. Put your hand over the sea and split the sea. Moses, the Torah does not tell us what Moses said to them, but the Torah does say that Moses places his hand over the sea splits, and as the sea is splitting, the cloud forms a barrier between them, protecting them. So yes, God is protecting and fighting them. The Israelites get to the other side throughout the night, and then they stand on the other side, and God says, now put your hand over the sea and zip up the sea over the water, over the Egyptians. The Egyptians are stirred, they tumble, they crash, they drown, and then what happens is the people then, they see the Israelites, they see the Egyptians. We'll go to the last verse. Okay, one second. It's on the last watch of the night. Vayashkef Adonai Machaneh Mitzrayim. God looks down at the camp of the Egyptians, the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud, and he causes great confusion. And he freezes their chariot wheels. And Egyptians say, let's run, because God is fighting for them against us. So the Egyptians recognize that they are losing. But God says to Moses, now place your hand over the sea, and the water will go over their chariots and their riders. Moses does so. The sea washes over the Egyptians before morning as they are coming after Israel. So the Egyptians who said, let's flee, they end up not fleeing. Vayinaer Adonai Mitzrayim b'toch hayam, a very rare use of this word. It's like Rashi says, it's like God was stirring a pot and taking the things from beneath the pot to the top, okay, like a stew. That's how it was. Vayashuvu amayim, vayachasu et harechev et haprashim. The water covered over them. The chol chel paro barim achareim bayam. All of the army of Pharaoh was coming in. Lo nishar bahem echad. There is nobody left. It's the zone of death. So what I would maintain is that the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud functions as the barrier between the zone of life and the zone of death. Right, and when we get to this, reading this in the synagogue, we sing this. This is part of the refrain of the Song of the Sea. And then these are the verses that are excerpted as part of our prayer. God saved Israel from the hand of the Egyptians. Israel saw Egypt dead, met al sfat hayam, dead, washed up on the banks of the sea. Israel saw the great hand that God did to Egypt. They feared God. And they believed in God and Moses, his servant. And let's not underestimate the power of that as the punchline of the whole story. The first line opening is a line of caustic, sarcastic tension, right? There weren't enough graves in Egypt that you had to come bring us here to die. So Moses, instead of being Don Rickles and giving a better line, he's now the agent of power. So power is what demonstrates to Israel, what's what and who's who. And the power of the moment of the splitting of the sea and the drowning of the Egyptians re-equilibriumizes the relationship. Because when they ask the question with such sarcastic intent, it threatens Moses. And Moses, who is not yet at the peak of his leadership, doesn't really know what to do. And all that's left for him is God's power and his agency in that. So God demonstrates power. The people stand back with awe. It's going to be a few days before they complain again, only a few days. But we have a new equilibrium in the relationship. And that's what this is about. So you may say that this is about God, Egypt, revealing in the redemption and the splitting of the sea and the Passover Seder and all that. And that is all true. Certainly it's all about that. But it's also about establishing a relationship. I think we keyed into that, in a comment earlier. This is about establishing a relationship between God and Israel with Moses. And that relationship is challenged at the beginning. And in order to resolve that challenge, the miracle, the sea functions on many, many levels. It destroys the Egyptians, it neutralizes that threat, but it also re-legitimizes God and re-legitimizes Moses, such that the people at this moment, having gone in with the worst coach's speech ever, now believe in God and believe in Moses. Okay, Lila, you had your hand up, and then we got Alan. We're over.
Another day.
Go ahead.
I did. It seems to me that when 600,000 people left Egypt and they were speaking in any large group, there are those who come forward to speak, as I am now, the squeaky wheel. And so when Moses speaks to them and convinces them that God will take care, then they in turn go back to their people, because if 600,000 rose up to complain, it would be completely overwhelming.
So what you have highlighted here, I think, is really part of the conversation, and Bob kind of alluded to this before, which is, and I'll say it in a different way, Lila, which is, are they all saying the same thing at the same time, or is a more realistic picture of this a factionalization of the people, and that there are parties in the people, some of whom say we can't do this, and some of whom say yes we can,
Right.
and Bob highlighted that midrash before, and I think what you're picking up on, Lila, is exactly that, which is that you cannot in the space of 3 verses kind of give the entirety of the texture of opinions here. What you have is, I guess, the movement of a dominant voice. Okay, leaving aside 600,000 as a question of reality or not, what the story is telling us is that the voice that is emerging from this is the rebellious voice. It's
Yes.
the acquiescent, compliant voices. They're muted. They've been crushed. Not crushed, but they're silenced here in this scene. That conflict takes place behind the scenes. The midrash puts it right in front. Okay, but here on the parchment itself, we have the groundswell of public opinion saying, hey, we don't want to do this. It's basically, I don't want to get too political, but saying, no, I don't want to vaccinate. Go ahead. Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, against the background of this, you look at the Haggadah, Seder night, and we sing Dayenu. It seems really mealy-mouthed now to look on Dayenu, saying it would have been, if only you'd done, with an outstretched arm, led us out of Egypt and not delivered all the miracles, it would have been enough. Obviously, none of that would have been enough for these people leaving Egypt. Only the most extreme circumstance of God drowning the Egyptians and bringing the Israelites to safety was enough for them. And the rest is just a convenient rewriting of history, including Dayenu.
Okay, so I'm gonna interrupt there and say that religion, Judaism, the Haggadah, is putting for us an ideal, okay, and creating for us an ideal that is not necessarily the ideal in the text, and idealizing the nation as a nation that after this experience and after all of its experiences now understands how grateful they need to be. Okay,
Yeah.
certainly the people in real time are not grateful, but the religious community, which is reenacting and recreating and invoking this story, is saying, if we could only have been, if it could, if that would only have been enough for us. In other words, that's the highest exclamation of gratitude here as a religious envelopment of the story, which is, at the end of the day, the story, functions as part of our religious narrative for the sake of our gratitude for our freedom. The Israelites don't appreciate their freedom. The thing that I omitted in the big part in the center was the debate that's really at the core of this is it better to be alive as a slave or dead but free, right? And so this is a debate that wages itself today. Even the American Revolution was live free or die on the license plates of where is it, New Hampshire, right? You can't say it more clearly than that. And so here there are accommodationists who want to stay a slave, but they want to remain alive. Perhaps they'll be taken care of. And there are revolutionaries who want freedom, and that drama lives on today. Bob, go ahead.
So to what degree was the immersion in the Red Sea serving as a mikveh to, if you will, purify the Israelites, purify the Egyptians as they are birthed through the birth canal? And did Moshe cut the umbilical cord? Or what is the umbilical cord?
So I think this is the power of symbols, and the power of the symbols is that and poetic symbols especially, lend to many, many layers of interpretation. And certainly, birth is one motif and theme in the whole story, that the Israelites are being birthed. Mitzrayim is another pun on narrow straits, and of course many people have pointed out that what you have here is the birth experience of the people, and that like you said, they're going through a mikveh. The only challenge I would make is that they don't immerse themselves because they go on dry land. They're not immersed in the bath, but they come out of the water. And so what you have is Moses, when Moses is the basket story, Moses was the first basket case. Okay. When Moses emerges from the basket, she says to him, without really knowing, Ki min hamayim mishitiu, I took him from the water. And so that becomes a kind of archetype for the whole story. And I would say, yes, one of the layers of meaning, certainly, and I know, you're inclined in the mystical direction here, and in the symbolic direction, is that this is a birth story. Absolutely, yeah. And it was the late Herbert Rand who also pointed out that and I didn't make reference to it last week, but the putting of the blood on the doorposts is in fact a birthing story, that the home of the Egyptians, of the Israelites, becomes a kind of collective womb for the people, and they emerge with the blood of childbirth, and so that's part of the symbol. On this reading, I was less inclined to that, thinking that blood on the doorposts was had more of a cleansing and purificatory function than, in fact, that's symbolic. But symbols are symbols, and they lend to many, many simultaneous interpretations. Go ahead, Ilana.
I think it's important to remember the verse "Ein somchin al hanes."
Nice. Do not
You
rely on
don't
miracles.
you don't just sit there and let somebody else do the work, or referring to God or to anybody. If you want to have miracles, you have to prepare for them first, meaning you need to do something. I don't know how much they could do, the Bnei Israel at that point, but maybe just a lesson for next time, for them to know that they cannot just sit there and ask from Moshe or from God to create miracles. You cannot rely all
Right.
the time.
I think that it's such a valuable insight because what we're seeing here is like a point in time on the timeline of the learning of Israel as a nation and Moses as a leader. And I would add also, God is God. God is also learning too. And the people are not they're not at a sophisticated level in which they are able to understand, I think, a deep truth, which is that the intervention that happens has to be a partnership. That's a very, very sophisticated truth, and it's not that the Torah is not giving us a sophisticated truth. I think the Torah is encouraging us to have this conversation in addition to like the main theme, which is, is it better to be slaves and alive or free and face all the risks? And clearly the Torah is moving us away from dependency to independence and seeing independence and freedom as the ultimate state, tied with all of the responsibility that's the Torah's view, in one sentence. It's that you cannot be a slave, you cannot be dependent. And this scene actually works against the interests of Israel. It's Moses. I mean, I'm very critical here. Moses is working against their interests by making them dependent. And by making them dependent, it creates within, the whole lifeblood circulation system of Israel a sense that all we need to do is pray for a miracle and that's what's going to happen. Well, that's not a winning strategy, right? That you don't win 6-day wars on the basis of praying for a miracle. Sorry. You win a war based on having a great army, preparing and planning also, and a little bit of luck. Obviously, the weakness of your enemy could help, but you don't rely on miracle. I mean, you become, a realist is to believe in miracle. That's what Ben Gurion said. What he meant, of course, was we do everything possible. And then at a certain point, all sorts of things happen. Who knows?
Also, im tirtzu en lo agada.
Indeed. And so it's a statement as to how strong the will is, a human will is, because everything is achievable. Everything is achievable. Go ahead, John.
Well, we've just had a great discussion about the importance of self-reliance. But at the same time, what this story is about, God is very active because Pharaoh is also another god, and this is a triumph of one god over another god.
Indeed.
So God is fighting too in his own interests.
No question about that. And I would say that's also an overarching theme here is that God is putting Pharaoh in his place and getting the people to become, when you are servants of a human being, you have no value, but when you are servants of God, you have infinite value. And God, by defeating Pharaoh in such drastic ways, has the people emerge from no dignity to complete dignity. So that's really the message of the Exodus. The Dayenu message is, now we are free. Now we have our full dignity, or at least we are capable of achieving fullest dignity. Okay. And okay, I know Bob, you sent me a couple of messages, but I can't. Go ahead, Marlene.
What is hitatzvu? Hitatzvu.
Hitatzvu.
He told them, because he was giving them an action to do stand up and do something and believe. So it was two things. It was physical and emotional.
I would say, so as critical as I am about Moses as a coach, Hitatzvu does mean, get a spine, stand up. Okay, but in those little coaching videos, he wasn't saying stand up, he was saying, you guys, there's the intangible. You got to find that intangible and put it, that's what you're putting out there. And you guys are the best, right? It's all about what's in you. It's, the tactical statement is stand up, be a man and face the battle, right? but the emotional is look within inside you. That's the coach's statement. And I the criticism that I think I want to kind of wrestle with is, well, wait a minute, Rabbi, you're saying they need to believe in themselves, and that's idolatry. You can't believe in yourself. You have to believe in God. And I say, well, wait a minute. Believe in God doesn't mean you necessarily that you should lack belief in yourself or you lack your own confidence. Take a look at Abraham. Take a look at Isaac. Take a look at Jacob. These were all people who had certain kinds of confidence. They knew their. Take a look at Joseph. Joseph was the one who knew more than anyone what his capabilities were. Go ahead.
But Rabbi, this isn't a Moses, the Jesus saves and Moses invests. This is believe. Oh, the mailman is here. Believe that you will have the power. It's not believe that God's going to take you.
So I'm taking a very radical kind of extreme interpretation here and saying what he's saying to them is all you need to do is hityatzvu, stick your spar, hityatzvu.
Hityatzvu means tiyu yetzivim,
Be firm,
hadakim.
right? Be strong. Ura'u, look for God's salvation, and atem tachar, Hashem yilachem lachem. God will fight for you, and you need to be silent. Whoa! Wait a minute. So Elliot Mamet is standing at the Red Sea there, going and saying, "Oh, wait a minute! I got my hand up." Moses, what you're saying to us is that we need to be passive. Is that what you're saying to us, Moses? Like, I'm ready, like, an 18-year-old version of me. I'm ready to have a fight. I'm ready to go to battle. I'm ready to take off the gloves. I'm ready to go make this a hockey game. What are you telling me? You're just saying to sit back and wait for God? No. Look, I'm making a joke of it, but this is if you read carefully, I don't want to go too deeply into, read the account of the Warsaw Ghetto, and you see that the debate in the ghetto about rebellion or not rebellion was a generational debate. It was the debate between the Mordechai and Aleviches, who said, we have nothing to lose, we're all going to die, and they're going to kill us. So let's go down with a fight. And an older generation is saying, no, we still can. And, this is certainly going to get us all killed, right? And so it's like, that's impossible. It's an impossible place, right? And it's not as if the older generation is saying, have faith, God is going to save us. They were too realistic. They knew already, okay? But they wanted to push and delay as much as they could because they just simply did not understand in the full perspective that we obviously after 80 years understand, okay? That's it's how powerful this is. It's just I'm saying, what's the strategy? Well, in the end, the strategy was they went through, the people went and did what they did, and God did, according to the text, the cloud was there, it functioned as a barrier, and the people were saved, and a new relationship emerged at the end of this. Okay, I think it's such a powerful moment. And it's complicated. It's a complicated text. We're right to have a lot of problems with it and to ask a lot of questions because it's a very convoluted, complicated text. But we kind of waded through the muddy land and got to the shore there, to use a metaphor. All right. We all got to go. Thank you so much.
We'll do it now with the viruses also. We'll get there.
Okay, so we'll get there. And you know what?
But we cannot rely. We have to do what we have to do.
I agree with you.
Right, Ellie?
Yes, we have to have faith and also get vaccinated. We're all vaccinated.
Thank you all very much. And thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Very, very interesting.